CJ Knows Show.
Well, welcome back. Welcome to the Michael Delong Show. I mean, well, maybe it's not the Michael. We should call it that because it's been hitting it out of the park the last time he was part of our show. We're here to talk about insurance. He's part of the Consumer Federation of America. Henry, why don't you introduce Michael again?
Well, you got the important part there. Michael DeLong is from the Consumer Federation of America, and that's consumerfed.org. If you're not familiar with it, you can find out more about it there. Now, when he came here before, he came in his role as the Research and Advocacy Associate of CFA's campaign for fair auto insurance. But he's much more than that. He's familiar with homeowners insurance. He going to speak to that today. But before that, he was a healthcare and antitrust advocate. He's served as legislative assistant in Maryland. But at least in our world, he's a social media star.
Oh, he's a superstar.
Because you know, Michael, I know you're there listening and probably viewing. We put out some short videos besides the main videos, and we also used X, Twitter, or whatever you want to label it now, to promote you. And you know, we're talking some big bucks here. We spent $12 on one boost, and maybe even $20 on another, but generally, when we do that with Twitter, you might get 30,000 impressions, which is a good number. We're not complaining about that. But one of the shorts that we promoted, as I said, in big dollars, it was $12 that we put behind you, Michael, because that's how much we believe in you. You got 400,000 plus impressions, and the engagements were in the thousands. So congratulations, Michael. We're riding your coattails, so we have you back on here, and we're going to stretch those coattails some more.
Put some money into it, Henry. Come on, let's imagine we actually spent money.
Yes, I know. I was just talking with Maria about spending money.
Yeah, thanks for being back, Michael. You're amazing, and like I was saying earlier, your information has been super valuable. I mean, you're doing work that the consumer needs to know about, that we all need to know about, and we thank you for being back here to talk about homeowners insurance or insurance in general. And you know, here in Florida, it's been one hell of a ride. You know, I recently bought a home, and when I had to go buy homeowners insurance, I almost had a heart attack. It is not cheap. Let's talk about homeowners insurance. What have you seen in the trend in the country, and particularly in Florida? What do you have to say about this?
First off, it's great to be back, and thank you for having me. Second, with regard to the trend in homeowners insurance, the trend is not good. The trend is especially not good in Florida. We have been seeing homeowners insurance costs go all up across the country, hundreds, thousands, sometimes almost $10,000 or more. People are paying a lot more in premiums. And in Florida, we're seeing things get exceptionally worse. We're seeing people's premiums go up by 100%, 150%, 200%, 250%. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for this, but we think one of the biggest reasons is climate change, which is wreaking havoc on insurance costs. It's changing weather, it's changing climate, and unfortunately, it's causing natural disasters to become a lot more frequent and a lot stronger.
Yeah, it's funny because there was so much pushback from climate change and global warming, and just recently we had Beryl run through the Caribbean and end up in Houston, Texas. And they thought, okay, it gets to Houston, it's going to be maybe a Cat 1, maybe major flooding, cars underwater. And I'm thinking about when you were here last year, and I'm watching this, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what the insurance industry is going to put out in Houston and that whole area where it came aground and its movement up, and then generated a lot of different storms from it. As it winds down, it has, you know, I can't imagine what that is going to cost will be to the insurance industry, and then how they're going to handle that. This is so early in the year. We've never seen a storm like that in June, you know, in July. It's just crazy. So climate change is a huge factor in this. Fair to say, right?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, in Florida, as you know, we're part of the hurricane area. I know we keep hearing how insurance companies are leaving the state. Have you followed that trend and what's going on and how we cover, or how the state is doing to cover up for the lack of insurance companies, or the fact that so many insurance companies are leaving the state?
I have followed that trend, and unfortunately, when insurance companies are withdrawing from Florida, it's again not a good sign. It's
Okay.
especially a big problem because a lot of the insurance companies that are leaving are the bigger companies that have more resources, like say Allstate, State Farm, the ones they're cutting back on the coverage. And these are the companies that, if there is a disaster, they have resources and money and could ride out a disaster and maybe take losses, but still come through. But what you have in Florida in a lot of cases now, it's smaller insurance companies that are extremely vulnerable because if they get hit with a flood of claims from, say, like a hurricane or a flash flood or something else along those lines, they get overwhelmed and they wind up going bankrupt. And unfortunately, the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation could be doing a lot more to help consumers. They've done some positive things, like they've
Right.
set up a new program that provides grants to help people undertake measures to reduce risk and strengthen their homes. But they're also mainly blaming lawsuits for like the cause of this problem. And lawsuits and fraud and stuff do contribute to rising insurance costs, but they're not
Sure.
the whole picture and they're not the main factor here.
Yeah, in March of the year before, the governor of the legislature, DeSantis, completely redid how we litigate now. If you have a loss, say, and you believe your claim is 100,000, and the insurance company is going to pay you 50,000, before you would hire the law firm or public adjuster, then a lawyer, they'd win, get you the 100, and then they get paid their attorney fees and costs on
Mhm.
top of that. Today, you don't do that. You get the money from the 100 you won. So after you pay the lawyers, the costs and everything, you're probably back down to close to that $50,000. So they're making it non-attractive for homeowners who have been victimized by a storm, who believe their insurance company is not paying them fair value to
Mhm.
replace or repair their home, that they're going to be dissuading them from suing or going after the for the money that they think they deserve for the coverage they have.
Yeah,
And the idea was it was going to bring the rates down, and
but
they're
it
not.
hasn't.
I'm showing here what you're. I think you sent some information about the top 10 U.S. cities. The top 6 are Florida cities. Do you have? Can you tell us about that information? What we're paying here in Florida for homeowners insurance?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, there's different ways of measuring exactly how much people are paying for homeowners insurance, and it varies a lot depending on your circumstances and, your basic things. But basically in Florida, you're paying really, really high premiums for homeowners insurance. And a lot of people in Florida actually lack insurance, which leaves them at incredible risk. And one of the places where a lot of people do lack insurance, homeowners insurance, is Miami. And Miami is very vulnerable to flooding, very vulnerable to hurricanes. The city's been fortunate in that it hasn't been directly hit by a large hurricane in many years, but there's no reason to think that that will continue.
Yeah, I have here on the list Hialeah, which is a suburb of Miami. It's pretty much Miami,
Mhm.
Cuban community, $17,606 average premium. Miami, $16,717. Third in the nation is Fort Lauderdale, which is just 30 minutes up the
Yep.
road, and 15,000 and change. Hollywood, Florida, 13,000 and change. West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie. Gosh, these are huge numbers.
CJ, and I just want to jump in with something here because it also speaks to something the Consumer Federation of America, Michael's organization, did. As bad as it is when you do have insurance, they estimate that the unprotected homeowners market is $1.6 trillion. So the idea of not only will the insurance companies be in trouble, but just the community, the state, or wherever you are, is going to be in trouble trying to rebuild.
Well, I have a question that follows with that because just like when you buy a car and you get a loan for the car, they require
Mhm.
that you have car insurance, and not for liability, not for uninsured motors, but they require it for compensation for the car. So if you have a wreck, that they're going to get repaid, the bank is going to get paid back, right?
Mhm.
I would imagine if you also have a mortgage on a house, you're required to have homeowners insurance, right?
Yes.
So when you guys get all these data about people who are uninsured and homeowners, is that just folks that have paid off their mortgage, or are these people that have mortgages that just quit paying? And because I would imagine mortgage companies would want to then push to insure and guarantee that their security, their security in their loan that they've done. Any understanding of that?
Yeah, actually, when we did our report on consumers who lack homeowners insurance, and most of them are people who have either paid off their mortgage and so don't realize they don't need to have insurance now and so
Right.
don't have it, or they are people who inherited their homes, say from like their
Okay.
parents or a family member or something, and have gone without insurance. And that's still a very bad idea because you're putting yourself at incredible risk. I just want to go through some things really briefly. For most people, your home is by far the biggest purchase you're going to make. It's the biggest asset you're going to hold. A
Right.
lot of people, your wealth is tied up. A lot of your wealth is tied up in that. And when a disaster strikes, and if you're uninsured, you are putting yourself in grave risk. I mean, state and federal governments, they'll provide some disaster relief for you, but it's nowhere near enough to rebuild your home. Like we actually
Bottled
did
water.
research. We actually did research and we found that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the maximum rebuilding grant from the agency is 42,500. Now imagine if you could try to rebuild your home or repair your home on with $42,500. You won't get very far. And so
Right.
if you don't have this insurance, you're on the hook for repairing or replacing everything. And we found actually our report found that 6.1 million homeowners lack homeowners insurance. And it's especially prevalent in Florida and Texas and other places, but it actually is a problem across the United States. And it's also important to remember that our data is a few years old. So costs have gone way up in the last couple of years. So the true number of people who don't have homeowners insurance, it's almost certainly higher by now.
How many million was that number?
6.1 million homeowners, and this was in 2021.
And CJ, that's not just the immediate homeowners problem. That's a generational problem because home ownership is how families have passed and grown wealth so that the next generation is better off than the previous generation. So you're talking about if this were to happen to a huge swath of the population, they've set themselves back to their great grandparents' level of
Now, this is
material wealth.
that's probably across the spectrum because we always used to make more money than our parents. We used to have
Mhm.
more than our parents, more education than our parents. I think a life expectancy that's more than our parents. Now I think everything is starting to
But we
slide the
could
other.
count on the house being worth more. That's
Right,
the one
yeah,
thing that
yeah.
we've
Yeah.
since at least World War II, it's been.
I think Florida is like number one in the country for cost of homeowners. And the thing that in our last show that you were on and we were discussing in at the last moment you mentioned flood insurance. And I was telling you, I think earlier there's a gentleman I know, the family lives in Orlando area and they have a retention pond in the back. They call it a lake, and it's how they sell homes in Florida. But it's in a non-flood zone, so they're not required to have flood insurance. But one of these rain saturated weeks, the thing filled up and they spewed into their house and they were on the hook for the paying to repair the house. They had to pay that out of their
Yeah.
own pocket because they didn't have flood insurance. And I know, Henry, you were talking about Palmetto. Was it west of 41 is all flood
That's
zone?
right.
Yeah.
30,000 people live there.
I mean, how many people think about it? Because when we started talking about it, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've got homeowners insurance. I'm questioning whether I have flood insurance. And even like my friend that was not in a flood zone, maybe we should have flood insurance anyway. I mean, especially if you live in Florida. I mean, talk to me about that, Mike.
Yeah. Well, first off, some basic things about homeowners insurance. It's basically a policy. It has a couple of different things where it covers both the structure of your home and also like some of your possessions, like say furniture,
Right.
equipment, kitchen appliances, other things. And homeowners insurance covers a lot of stuff. Like it covers damage from say like wind and hurricane, damage if like say a tree falls on your home, but it does not cover flooding. In order for that, you need to have a separate flood insurance policy. And most people don't know that. They think that like because they have homeowners insurance, they're protected against flooding. And then sadly, a lot of them only find out, well, when their home has already been flooded and they realize they have to pay for the repairs or damage. Flood insurance can be gotten in one of two different ways. It can be gotten from a government program called the National Flood Insurance Program, which basically is run by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it's supposed to provide affordable flood insurance for people who can't get it in the private market, or you can get it from a bunch of private insurance companies that sell flood insurance. And flood insurance is normally not required unless you live in a floodplain. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, they do these maps where they try to calculate like the risk of a flood. And if you live in like say a floodplain, you are required to purchase flood insurance if you have like a federally backed mortgage. So but outside of these floodplains, you're not required to purchase it. And most people as a result don't have flood insurance. Now, one of the catches is that just because you don't live in a floodplain doesn't mean that you can't experience a flood. They can happen in places outside of the floodplains. And also FEMA's maps about floodplains, they're based on past information, which used to be substantially more reliable. But again, climate change is now meaning that there's more natural disasters, a more sea level rise, more storms, like say where there's a huge amount of rain in like a few hours, which causes flooding. And so the flood maps are not as reliable as they used to be.
It reminds me, I'm sitting here, I spent a lot of money on buying a house last year, and I am not sure if I have flood insurance.
You should check.
I'm going to, because in the sense, because I go to my insurance agent and I said, got a new house, I want to get insurance. I just pay whatever they say, this is it, and I shop but I never asked them, does this include flood insurance? I just bought the
Even more
insurance they
important,
offered.
you should actually also ask if your home is like located in a flood zone, if it's like flooded in the past, if the area has been vulnerable. And unfortunately, a lot of the sort of like real estate companies and agents and stuff don't volunteer this information. You have to go digging for it yourself.
Right. It sounds crazy, but I'm willing to pay. I have the money to pay. I just don't know if I have it or not, and I'm relying on the people that have sold me the home, the insurance agents, just like when we talked about auto insurance. A follow-up question with that, we talked before about auto, and they do rates based on credit check. They do your rates based on, in flood insurance, is there any, we just rattled off a bunch of numbers, and South Florida being the most expensive, Hialeah, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale. Is it by zip code, region, based on history that they come up with the numbers? Do you know how insurance companies come up with numbers? We know in auto it can be your credit rating, your income you make, your kind of whether you're married or not, all those factors. Does this have anything to do with that, or is it just?
And if you had two houses exactly the same in the same neighborhood with the same policy, could you be getting two different prices?
Yes, I think you could. Homeowners insurance, when it comes to homeowners insurance premiums, socioeconomic factors matter. And yes, they charge people more if your credit score is worse. Not, as far as we can tell, not quite to the same extent as auto insurance, but still they can charge you more based on your credit score, more based on other factors. The difficulty, again, is getting information about this. And if you actually stay tuned, we just are going to get a lot of information about homeowners insurance in next month, and we hope to be able to do reports on homeowners insurance costs, including looking at some of these factors, but that's like a ways off. When it comes to flood insurance, I would have to go back and do research, but I don't think it's so much socioeconomic factors. It's mostly just like where the water goes and how risky that is, and your elevation and other things like that. But again, flood insurance, trying to map where exactly floods will happen and how frequently they happen is complicated, and climate change has thrown so much stuff out of whack, and it's, again, a very big problem. And one of the other things about homeowners insurance is that the people who lack it, it tends to be especially people who are lower income, people who are working class, and that's another big problem because they have less resources to recover if they get hit with a disaster and they're uninsured.
Florida, we had this crisis of these companies leaving. The political class, DeSantis, these guys come up with, what is that, Citizens Property Insurance? It's like
Citizens, the insurance company of last resort, the state-backed insurance company of last resort.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a socialist insurance program for homeowners, right?
Kind of, yeah. But
I don't know if is it flood insurance or just Citizens deal with flood and regular.
It's also a customer referral system for private insurance companies too, when you really look at how it works, right,
mean?
Michael?
What do you mean? Talk
Well,
to me about that.
they can force you to buy from a private insurance company.
yeah, Citizens is the Florida state-backed insurance company of last resort, and it offers a homeowners insurance. Although, from what I remember, it also requires that the homeowners insurance premiums be higher than like other available, any other private insurance available options. I think the goal behind that is to try and discourage people from like turning to Citizens First as like sort of a place where they can get homeowners insurance. But in a lot of Florida, insurance is so outrageously expensive, or there are very few homeowners insurance options at this point, that a lot of people are on Citizens. And one of the things also, I need to go back and look at this, but I believe Citizens is now requiring more people to purchase flood insurance. So if you have a policy with Citizens, you need a homeowners insurance policy, you need to have flood insurance as well. And on the one hand, more people having flood insurance and protection would be a good thing if they're like located in very vulnerable areas to flooding. On the other hand, this is also, you're requiring people to buy an additional insurance policy, requiring them to spend more money, and you're not doing anything to try and lower insurance costs overall or to try and reduce risk. So there's a problem there.
I would think just like in healthcare, and Henry, you have some knowledge of healthcare insurance, I'm sure, that if you get people to buy that probably would not use it, it props up that money and for money to help for the people that will use it. You understand where I'm going with that?
That makes a lot of sense. What I wanted to go back before we get too far from it. So what they also can do with Citizens, if you're a customer of Citizens, and another private insurer says they're willing to take you on, and they'll only charge you 20% more than what you're paying now, you are forced to take the 20% bump in your premium price and go with the private insurer.
Is that correct?
Interesting. I need to go back and look. If so, that strikes me as a bad policy. The idea of Citizens, I mean, you want to be trying to make insurance.
I've been a Citizens customer.
Have you been really?
And they made this worse than when I was on there. Before, I would just be told that we're replacing you unless you opt out. And now you don't even get a choice. But I'm not relevant to being a customer of Citizens anymore.
Well, you want to be at this point, I would hope that the Florida would want to make insurance more affordable instead of like less. So increasing the prices sounds like just a bad overall policy. Yes, Citizens may be like a government-backed program, but government-backed insurance is a lot better than no insurance. And if this is what it takes to like, I don't know, make sure people have affordable insurance either while you like hopefully transition to something better, then so be it. I mean, you don't want people to be uninsured because that leads to catastrophe if there's like another massive natural disaster.
Michael, everybody here in Florida, if you talk to the right DeSantis people, they're avid anti-government, involved in anything. This is what they say, of course, but they love Social Security, which is socialism, but they don't admit it is. They love Medicare, but it's socialism, but they don't want to admit that is. They would be against and the government insuring anybody in Florida, but of course they all partake in Citizens willingly, but they're, politically are going to say, we're not socialists, we don't. What can Florida do? Let me make Michael Governor Michael of Florida. What would you be leading? What changes need to happen from the political class to try to fix this problem, Governor?
Oh boy. Well, a lot of stuff needs to happen. First, I would get rid of the requirement that Citizens that their insurance policies be extremely expensive compared to like other private insurance policies. People need insurance, and whether it comes from a private company or the government, and that's one of the first things. Second, I would massively expand the mitigation program. My Safe Florida Home, the new program that provides grants to consumers to harden their homes, like against wind or fallen trees, or other things like that. That's a good program, should have been done many years ago, and it needs to be greatly expanded so that basically everyone can partake in it. Like ideally, everyone in Florida should be like doing these programs.
Michael, but why don't we make sure that when they build these homes, that they're up to code to handle the hurricanes and so forth?
That too. That should be done.
Like we have to go back to fix. Remember Hurricane Andrew that went through Homestead, destroyed any new building. It's because, I shouldn't say this, Latinos, my people, not very good in following code enforcement in South Florida. And of course they get away with not building out what they should, and hurricane comes and everything's gone. Only buildings standing are the old buildings. I mean, we're not, that has to be part of it, right? Ensuring the code is set, and that the ones that aren't are brought up to code. What else would you do, Mike?
I would also require that make insurance companies be required to pass these discounts on to consumers, because all this efforts to like reduce risk and promote mitigation, it's good, but it doesn't make any sense if, say, like someone spends like $10,000 to strengthen their home in hopes that their insurance premiums will go down, but then the insurance company just takes the money and keeps it for themselves. So I'd pass a law requiring that these discounts for all this mitigation be passed through to consumers. Fourth, I'd require the insurance companies, I'd say if you want to do business in Florida, you have to stop funding fossil fuel projects. Because those contribute to climate change. What a lot of insurance companies actually do is that they fund and make money from investing in things like oil pipelines or coal-fired power plants, stuff that pumps gas into the atmosphere, increases climate change, and actually increases insurance costs. And so
You
I'd
would
be
think
like,
they'd be the ones against that, wouldn't you?
yeah, you would think so, but a lot of them make money from it. And so I'd say, if you want to operate in Florida, you're going to stop funding these fossil fuel companies. You should be making the problem better. You should not be making it worse. I would also crack down on basically insurance company abuses. I think that a lot of companies do things where they make people jump through excessive hoops or fill out excessive paperwork to get legitimate claims. I think that they treat a lot of their consumers very poorly. So I'd crack down on that and devote more resources to that enforcement. I'd also try, well, this may be controversial, but I would also look at land use and whether it makes sense in certain places to have like homes that are on, say, like barrier islands and that are very vulnerable to flooding or to hurricanes. I would try and look at that and promote incentives for like better land use. I would also say, hey, if you want to live on, say, like this barrier island in this very vulnerable place, we understand that, but we also cannot afford to subsidize you to a certain extent. You've got
I
to
agree
absorb
with
like
that.
more of the costs.
I don't understand why we have to, you know, if I'm in a non-flood zone, I'm in a very protected area, why I have to pay more premiums to cover for some guy who wants to live on Anna Maria Island, wants to live on the Barrier Island, wants to live
Yeah.
in, you know, it just, why do I have to shoulder the economic balance of that? And that goes to my next question. I know you haven't finished the last question, but it's about paying. I mean, how can insurance companies be allowed to decide where they want to take or where they want to write policies? In other words, I'll only write policies east of 41 in Palmetto. I'm not going to run any policies west of 41 in Palmetto. You know, so instead of them, I believe they're being told you have to do the entire state.
Yeah.
If you want to work in Florida. But is that a viable option or not?
I think so, yes. Although you would have to trying to think how to phrase this. I think, yes, you saying that insurance companies, you have to write policies in the entire state. And if you want to do business in Florida, that's a viable option. You will have to give them like some sort of latitude, because some places where they'll write policies, those policies will have to be more expensive. Something else I would actually do is promote the use of better catastrophe models. These are when insurance companies use like past and data and knowledge and run like these simulations to try and calculate insurance risk. Right. And they do that in Florida, but the problem is that a lot of these catastrophe models rely on incomplete data. They aren't very good. They're not transparent at all. So what I'd recommend is that Florida creates like a public sort of catastrophe model where the data is transparent. You can see, here's what we're using to try and what the insurance companies are trying to use to calculate the risk. Here's the input, and are the reasons for your premiums. But it's a big, massive problem, and frankly, there aren't a whole lot of easy answers. And in fact, in some places, depending on like a climate change, you might have to be like, this place, I don't know, say like the Florida Keys or something, you might have to say the insurance costs are going to have to be very, very high here, unfortunately, because the risk is there. So,
Henry,
Michael hit on something there with catastrophe insurance, and this is just something that's been floated as an idea. And of course, there's a lot of special interests on each side that would be for it or against it. So Citizens for insurance here in Florida is for the people that can't get insurance for their particular house. But some people have suggested that if we turn Citizens insurance into a disaster-based insurance, so that, say, Citizens would only cover hurricane damages, they wouldn't be the individual company for homeowners insurance, that we would then be able to get more homeowners insurance companies in competing for for homes in Florida because we would have eliminated the hurricane risk component of their business model. What do you think, Michael?
I have to do more research to give a definitive answer, but generally, we at Consumer Federation America, we don't like the idea of like slicing out coverage, say like saying this policy will only cover like say hurricanes or wildfires or specific storms or other things like that. We think that insurance, part of the strength and the benefit of insurance is when you have a policy that covers a lot of different disasters and offers consumers protection. And so I don't
Well,
think
they would. The actual homeowners insurance policy would cover all those other things. It's just the state would assume the risk of hurricanes for all the insurance companies, and then have a reinsurance fund
okay, I see.
to respond. And then that all goes into, you'd have to explain reinsurance and everything like that. But I don't know. What do you think, CJ?
Oh man, I get so tired of the political framing or mindset. Here in Florida, we have the right wing that is anti-communist, anti-socialist. Ask them. But yet they want the government to be a socialist system, but they're so ignorant to not realize that what they're asking for is socialism. If government or insurance if government's going to act like the insurer, then you're having state-run, businesses.
Well, if the government acts like an insurance company, then they need to have say in like they need to do better insurance regulation. They also need to have a say in like, here are the policies that people should adopt to reduce risk. They also need to be able to tell the insurance companies like, oh, well, you guys need to shape up. You need to stop treating consumers so terribly. You need to reward mitigation measures. You got to do more. So
today we were discussing outside of this office, folks about, let's say in Anna Maria Island, now recent legislature said that if you own property on the beach, for example, in Anna Maria, you own the rights. You can block off the beach all the way down into the water. So what used to be, when it was public beach, it was for the public to go to. But yet now homeowners can restrict access to the people. But yet then the people are being asked to insure those same people that can now restrict our access to the beach. So
Florida doesn't have like sorry, go ahead.
No, but most places do. I was told that recently they've taken that down. So even people who anchor their boats offshore, let's say you have a land on the water, not beach water, front water, but right, and then people on their sailboats anchor right off your property. They don't like the sight of somebody sitting there off of their $1 million home anchored. So they are now getting law enforcement to move them. They feel they have a right of ownership.
Wow.
My thing is that, okay, you're going to play that game. Why am I paying to subsidize your homeowners or flood insurance when, you have the right to keep the people away from the beach or boats from anchoring in the water behind your property? My point is that we have this hypocrisy that so many people say they're anti, government, anti-Social Security, anti-this, but yet they're banging the door down for socialism in every way, including government-owned insurance. But then we pretend in the state of Florida to act like we're about, choice. Maybe, and I like your opinion on this. Back in the day when the United States was very competitive, there was this antitrust stuff that was going on, I believe, where we wanted to make sure there was competition in the market. Like right now, I'm told there are 3 major corporations that own all of the food markets in our country. So there's no competition. A farmer is forced to sell his product at a fixed rate. There's no competition. And, you were talking about insurance companies should be not allowed to create these savings and then they should pass it on. But it's not even happening in, let's say, our food industry where there was high inflation and now there isn't, but they haven't dropped the prices. McDonald's hasn't dropped the prices of what we pay there. The food, hasn't gone down, even though they're keeping it for greed to make the money. In housing in Florida, the rents have gone skyrocketing and they're not coming down like they should. They had a reason originally to increase them, but it's not market driven in the sense because we don't have the same competition. It sounds like in the insurance industry, this is some of the same stuff. We don't have a very competitive market, maybe. What is your opinion?
The insurance industry is kind of different because in most places you actually do have a more competitive market than a lot of things. Like, well, Florida right now, you're an exceptional case because so many insurance companies have gone bankrupt or withdrawn or offering like incredibly high premiums. But in a lot of states, at least until recently, insurance companies, there were a lot of different insurance companies, auto insurance
Right.
companies, homeowners insurance. So you had more competition. What you were talking about a little earlier, that's antitrust enforcement. And that's what I used to work on. And basically, over the last
I
few
love to hear you
generations, there's
say.
been a huge wave of corporate consolidation in many parts of the American economy, from like supermarkets and food to like telecommunications to other things. And this wave of consolidation was promoted by CEOs and thinkers and think tanks who said that it would result in benefits to consumers, that there would be more economies of scale, that there would be better quality products, that prices would go down. They emphasized a lot that prices would go down and that consumers would generally benefit. Well, consumers in most cases have not benefited or haven't benefited very much. You have often like worse quality of products. You have worse customer service. That's an especially big one. You have just less, ironically, less competition. You ironically often have less innovation because if there are a few massive companies that dominate an industry, it's harder for like smaller groups to break in and to like sort of promote their products. And so Consumer Federation of America, we've been supporting stronger antitrust enforcement and saying that, hey, corporate consolidation is not automatically good, and it's especially not automatically good for the little guy. So you should aggressively stop like monopolies and block oligopolies and other things. So it's not quite as relevant in insurance because in most places there's a lot of insurance companies and other things, but antitrust enforcement is an important thing, and corporate consolidation is a big problem. So.
You know, I think I'm going to vote for anybody that's worked for Consumer Federation of America because they actually have knowledge of the things that they're supposed to legislate about.
Thanks.
I know I'm serious, Mike. If you run, I'm writing a check. It just seems like we have political class that is out of tune or out of step or don't know enough, or maybe just listen to in this case, to the insurance industry rather than to the folks that advocate for something that's fair and free and correct, like your organization.
Yeah, a lot of the people in the Florida legislature who serve on, like, say, the insurance committee, they have an insurance background. They come from like the companies or they've served as agents, and that can be very good. They can provide like useful insights and have knowledge, but it also means they may not be as sympathetic to consumers, and they may think, oh, we just need, well, the industry to do its thing and things will work out. And unfortunately, that's really not the case. So they may be
Awesome.
biased intentionally or unintentionally.
Thank you, Mike.
See,
Henry?
yeah, in your comments there about whether the government should be involved or not involved, and I don't know the details of this system, but compared to the United States, I'm going over next month to see my daughter in the UK. She's married to a young man from there, and they recently bought a new house. You know, they had a starter house, and now they bought a new house, and they're in a comfortable situation. The house is purchase price, rounding it out, was £600,000, which is a
lot of
significant house.
750.
And she was complaining that their homeowners insurance had just gone up to £400 a year.
$600.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's pretty low.
And I'm looking here, the median average UK home insurance cost, so not for every $600,000 house, so this is including the other ones, it's £251 a year. So somehow they don't have hurricanes to speak of it, but they are an island nation, and there must
Hardly
be
have any hurricanes. They just have bad cold weather all the time. That's
yes.
Yeah.
And the average, well, anyway, I won't go into all the details. That's pretty much rounded out to £250 a year.
Now, the interesting point of what you're bringing up, and maybe for Consumer Federation of America, is why is that? Not just the UK, in the Western world, why do they pay certain rates and we pay higher rates? Is it our political system is broken and sort of like what Mike was talking about, where we have insurance industry people inside, or a lot because we allow lobbying, which other societies, like I know in Japan, you can't have lobbyists that are non-Japanese. I mean, you're not going to have that. Here, everything's wide open, and we'll take the dollar. Here, the Supreme Court said corporations are the same as human beings, which I probably disagree with. Or even when the corporations commit a crime, like Boeing might be charged. In Europe, the actual corporate president is charged. I mean, he will go to jail or she will go to jail. Here, they're not. The company has problems, but not the guys who make the decision. I'm very curious to know why, and because I'm sure there are more risky places in Europe that have homeowners insurance, and if they're cheaper, why is that, and why ours are so expensive? I mean, we probably have to dive into this, because the solutions we have for fixing it, I just don't see it happening. I mean, what do you think? I don't see the rates going down anytime soon, and the way they do food, they're not dropping, and they'll just pile more costs on, and they'll go up higher and higher. When does it ever go down? I mean, have you ever seen it go down? Michael, have you?
Occasionally, but actually this was before my time, when there's like stronger consumer protection and regulations that get enacted. And also, like, you can at least stop insurance rates from going way up. With regard to your question about other countries and insurance regulation, I'd have to do more research, but one possibility is that they regulate insurance. They do an overall national insurance regulation where the national government takes charge and has more resources and funding and staff, and and things are better coordinated, and they try to determine overall policies. That could be one reason. In the United States, unfortunately, we do insurance regulation at the state level. And so the quality varies widely on like how good the state government is. And some state governments try to protect consumers.
The South is a lost case, brother.
And Florida, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be doing a good job. So
I like what you say, man. I don't know, Michael, what we're going to do here.
We're going to do our best to try and help consumers, push for more mitigation measures, try and ensure that the state government does its job, and offer advice. So,
okay, Michael, I'm serious about this. You run for office, I want to write a check. I am not kidding. Every time I've spoken to you, I learned something. I'm better educated, and I feel better about in my choices. And one of the first things I'm going to do tonight is go back and figure out, do I have flood insurance? And even if I'm not in a flood zone, I might just purchase it anyway, because, hell, you don't know. There's little lakes all over this darn state. I mean, there's alligators, for crying out loud, in my old lady's ex-garage. You never know. And if there's alligators, there's water somewhere, right? So we got to make sure we have flood insurance. Henry, anything else?
No, that was great, Michael. And
now we got to have him back again, because he's got a whole new topic to talk to us about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michael, you're amazing. Thank you for your time. I think we want to script out a lot of questions and have them back again, because
we'd be happy to.
You're amazing, an amazing person that does a lot of good for the community and for the people of the country. And hopefully we can help spread your word, and more people will go to Consumer Federation of America and check out what you have there, because from your advice you gave us on car insurance and understanding all that, to now homeowners insurance and trying to get a handle of that. And for me personally, I'm trying to figure out, what is the solution? I mean, not that I can resolve anything, but I'd like to bang the drum to see the changes now that I actually own a home and I'm paying these outrageous
We can write up some solutions and try and share them with you in the next few weeks. I'm going to be gone for most of next week in Maine visiting my cousin, but when I get back, I can start working on that.
Awesome. Michael, you're a god. Thank you very much.
We'll give him his own parking spot out here.
Yeah, you can come by. You come to Florida, we'll treat you. We'll take you to Disney. We'll figure it out. It's like the Super Bowl winner. Thanks, Michael. Have a good one. And thank you very much for being with us.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
He's amazing.
The CJ Knows Show.